Hey guys, Mac DeStroir here. It's been far too long since I put out a video and I'm about to make up for that. This is the first of a few videos I'm putting together on how to build a PC. And I've thrown in a couple of small mods purely for aesthetics. They serve no practical purposes and they are totally unnecessary. I will be taking you through the necessary steps from boxes of stuff on a table like you see here to a fully functional piece of hardware. As an added bonus, we get to see just how relevant the AMD FX series holds up against the stiff competition of the ever-dominant Intel as well as the new Ryzen CPUs from AMD. So stick around and check it out. Okay, so before we begin, I'd like to state that this video is not sponsored in any way. What you see here is from my own hard-earned money and general passion for the craft. I'd also like to let anyone know that's curious, there's a link in the description to a PC part picker list with everything you see here today. So without further ado, let's start taking a look at each of the components and mods, starting with the motherboard. I'll be listing the major highlights of each of the components, and then the reasons that I chose the particular part. For the motherboard, I went with an Asus M5A99FX Pro Revision 2. It's about $135 retail. It's a top-tier AM3 Plus board made by Asus. It's got overclocking software if you want to use that, but I'm going to be using the BIOS. It has dual Intelligent Processors 3 for hardware control and performance tuning. It has a UEFI BIOS with direct key access on the board. It's a 990FX chipset. It has quad SLI and Crossfire X support, and it has a USB BIOS flashback and Memo-K buttons directly on the board as well. The reasons I chose it is it's an AM3 Plus socket for my CPU, it's a great quality board made by Asus, it has a great overclockability, and it has 4 PCI Express 2.0 slots, which will probably come in handy. For the processor, I went with an AMD FX 8370. It's about $130 retail. It's an 8-core, 8-thread, 4 GHz stock out of the box with a 4.3 GHz turbo. It's unlocked for true overclocking because it's AMD. It's great performance for a low price, obviously. And this particular model won a world record for reaching 8.7 GHz. I can't remember the guy's name who did it, but I'll definitely post a link in the description. The reasons I chose it is because it's AMD and I am a humongous fan of AMD. It was a great price. It has a lower TDP than the 9000 series, which I'm only concerned with to keep heat down. And it's got 8 cores, which is solid for content creation and gaming and streaming and other things like that, virtual machines and such. And it's unlocked for overclockability because it's AMD. So the reason that I went with the CPU I went with instead of picking like a new Ryzen CPU or even an Intel chip is because, number one, Ryzen's too fresh for me. I'd rather let that simmer on the market a bit, and I'd actually rather get my hands on Threadripper, which is supposed to drop here very soon. And as far as Intel is concerned, they cost a little bit too much for my blood. To get what I need out of it that this processor provides, it would have cost at least another anywhere between $50 and $150 from Intel. So if I was building just a gaming rig, sure, I would have went with Intel. I could have got like a nice i5 for a decent price and I would have been gaming like a madman. But I am doing much more than gaming with this machine. This is a total content creation machine. It's a complete workstation. I'll be running CAD programs, video editing software, audio editing software, photo editing software, as well as using it as a media center and playing games. So it's doing a lot, and this processor can handle all of that, believe it or not. To cool the CPU, instead of using the stock heatsink, I went with the NZXT Kraken X62. It's about $159 retail, 280mm radiator. It's increased performance from the previous NZXT models. It has ultra-low evaporation, rubber reinforced with braided nylon sleeves. It has customizable RGB infinity mirror style block on it, so that looks really cool. The reasons I bought it is because it had great reviews. It's a 280mm radiator instead of a 240mm radiator, and it has customizable RGB. As for the graphics card, I went with an Asus Dual RX 480 04G edition, and the dual does not stand for dual video card, it stands for dual fan. Some people were being confused and misled by this apparently, but no need to be confused anymore because the card's really hard to get a hold of thanks to crypto mining. It's about $205 retail. I scored it for $180, which is why I bought it. It has a 1300 MHz stock clock speed with a boost clock of 1320 in OC mode. It has a patented wing blade fan with 105% more air pressure than the previous model is what I assume that stands for. It has VR-ready HDMI ports. It has 4 GB of GDDR5 memory, and it is a massive 2.5 slot. So check and make sure it's going to fit inside your build. The reasons I chose it is because it's AMD, and like I said before, I'm a big fan of AMD. It was the top tier card at the time, being the RX 480, and it has cable-free Crossfire X support. Now I'm not sure if my motherboard supports that or not, but I'll definitely let you guys know. For the RAM, I went with a G-Skill Ripjaws X. I went with a 16 GB kit, it's 2 8GB sticks. It's about $105 retail. It's DDR3 1866. It's a dual channel kit, it's good for overclocking, and it has a lifetime warranty. The reasons I went with it is because it had great reviews and it was a great price. It's good for overclocking, and I like the size of the heat sinks. This may be a problem with certain builds, so always refer to the components inside your build to see if you can use RAM with large heatsinks. The power supply I chose is a Rosewill Photon Series 750 watt. It's about $90 retail. It has an 80+ gold certification. It's fully modular. It has a silent 135mm fan. It has extra long cables for this big case that I have, and it has a 5-year warranty. The reasons I bought it is because it had great reviews. It was an 80+ gold certification. It's fully modular. It had a good price and a 5-year warranty, which is awesome. The case I went with to house the build is a Rosewill Rise. Not the Glow Edition, just the regular Rise Edition. It's about $60 retail. It's a large size capable of fitting an eATX motherboard, a custom water loop, and a couple of radiators. It supports 3 140mm fans, 2 on the top, 1 on the rear, and 3 120mm fans on the front. It has dual power supply mounts. It has top, front, and bottom dust covers. It has a top I/O with 2 USB 3.0, 4 USB 2.0, a headphone and mic jack, and a 3-speed fan controller. It also has a very large windowed side panel, which I like. The reasons I went with it is because of the price, great price. It's a very large case, which I like a lot, and it has a great side window to check out all these beautiful parts once we're done putting it together. I went ahead and grabbed some case fans too from Thermaltake. These are the Ring RIING edition, 12 and 14 LED RGB 256 color. They're about $54 and $57 retail, and they have high static pressure, which is very nice. 40.6 CFM and 50.15 CFM accordingly. They have a fan controller for speed and color selection, and they also have anti-vibration mounts. The reasons I went with them is because they had great reviews, the anti-vibration mounts are nice, they have good airflow and customizable LEDs. I also grabbed the NZXT Hue Plus case lighting kit. It's about $60 retail. It has customizable RGB lighting, 2 output channels that support 40 LEDs each. Also supports the NZXT Air RGB fans, that's AER. The reasons I bought it is because it has customizable RGB and I want to light up this case, and it pairs with the Kraken X62 in the CAM software. I needed a keyboard, so I went with the Corsair Strafe RGB mechanical gaming keyboard, the Cherry MX Silent Edition. It's about $150 retail, and it's the world's first fully integrated noise reduction mechanical gaming keyboard, with it being up to 30% quieter than others. It has textured and contoured FPS and MOBA keycap sets that it comes with. It has 100% anti-ghosting, it's fully programmable keys, pass-through USB port, and per-key backlight customization. The reasons I bought it is because it's mechanical, it has silent switches, and it has RGB and Q-Link functionality. I also grabbed a Corsair M65 Pro RGB FPS gaming mouse. It's about $49 retail, it has 12,000 DPI, it has surface calibration, it's made out of aircraft grade aluminum for lightweight durability, it has a weight tuning system to set the center of gravity, extra large glide paths, it's optimized sniper button in case you're not good at sniping, and it has a DPI switch so you can change your mouse speed on the fly, which is very convenient sometimes. The reasons I went with it is because it has a high DPI, it's very comfortable actually, I like the DPI switch on it as well, and it has RGB and Q-Link functionality to go along with the keyboard. I even grabbed the Corsair MM800 RGB Polaris Gaming Mousepad. It's about $60 retail. It's got a low friction micro-textured surface. It has a pass-through USB port on it. It has a large surface area, which is nice. Non-slip rubber base so it doesn't move around on you at all. And Q-enabled 15-zone RGB lighting. The reasons I bought it? Sadly, just because of RGB and Q-Link functionality. Don't hate me. So that's everything that's going inside of the build. Now let's take a look and see the small mods that I said we were going to do. So before we get started, there's a few things you're going to need to build. Gloves or an anti-static strap to protect your parts, a Phillips head screwdriver, zip ties for cable management, and snips for the zip ties. Now the first step is to take the motherboard out of its packaging and place it either on the box or onto a clean, flat, static-free surface. Lift the retention arm on the CPU socket and grab the CPU, but be careful not to touch the top heat spreader or the bottom gold pins. Align the gold corner on the CPU with the triangle that's been etched onto the CPU socket of the motherboard. Gently lower the CPU into place. Give it a little wiggle to ensure it's all the way in, and close the retention arm. Now I need to apply thermal paste to the CPU. Standard practice is to place a small amount between the size of a grain of rice and the size of a pea onto the center of the CPU heat spreader. I'm using an amount closer to the size of a pea. Now I've already removed the stock heatsink bracket from the motherboard and installed the standoffs for my liquid cooler. This is a different process for almost every heatsink, so refer to the directions included with yours. Now I can install the liquid cooler. Carefully lower it onto the standoffs and begin threading each of the thumb screws. Use an alternating corner method to keep the cooler evenly flush with the CPU. And finger tight is all that's necessary. I've grabbed the case and removed all the panels and installed the standoff screws for the motherboard. But before installing the motherboard, install the I/O shield on the back of the case. Now to install the motherboard, I'll grab onto the CPU cooler and gently lift the board and set it into place. Now I have to lift the radiator and dry fit that as well. When placing the motherboard screws, I also use an alternating corner method just to get everything to line up properly. And you might have noticed that I've already installed the case fans and their controllers. Most case fans will either plug directly onto the board or into some other type of controller that will plug in directly onto the board. Now installing RAM is very easy. Pay attention to the groove on the gold pins of each RAM module. Open the latch for each of the DIMM slots you'll be using. Align the groove with the slot and gently press each module into place until you hear a small click. Now for RAM to run and dual channel function properly, you must install your RAM into the correct DIMM slot on your motherboard. I've installed them into the blue slots for one set of dual channel memory on this particular motherboard. Now I'll install my liquid cooler radiator along with the 140mm fans. I'll be placing the radiator fans in a pull configuration instead of push. This prevents dust from accumulating between the fan and the radiator. It also places the fans towards the outside of the case, allowing the light from them to be seen through the exterior. Now this makes for a tricky install because you have to mount both fans and the radiator all at the same time. Normally I'd install the graphics card next, but it might get in the way of installing the power supply cover. And it's easy to install at any time anyways, so I'm going to leave it out for now. Instead, I'll install the power supply. It's as simple as placing it into the case in the appropriate location and securing it in with the 4 screws from the back of the case. Now I'm facing the fan toward the bottom vent on the case in this particular instance. This will allow it to pull cool air from under the case through the chassis of the power supply. And after it's secured into place, I can plug in the cables. Now this power supply is fully modular, allowing me to install only the cables I need so that it doesn't get cramped with unnecessary ones. It's very convenient. Now I can install the power supply cover. I'm also using this to mount a single hard drive, so I fastened that to it first. I've also mounted my Hue Plus box to it with sticky foam. Now I'll run the graphics card and SATA power cables through the designated slot I made for them, and then make sure it's in place properly. Time to place the top of the case back on and run the cables for the I/O and power. Simply run the cables through the proper area of the case to the back. And then snap the top in place. Then I'll do the same for the front panel. Now I only have 3 USB 2.0 connectors on my board. 2 of them will be used by the case top I/O, and I need 1 each for my water cooler and my case lights. So I got crafty and ran a USB cable from the back of the case into the case to my water cooler. Now installing the graphics card is real easy. Just open the tab, align your card with the slot properly, and then press it into place gently and make sure the tab closes properly. Then just install the support screws and it's done. Now I need to run a SATA cable to my hard drive through the power supply cover. And next I'll install my case lights. Now it's time to run all the cables and connect them. I saved this for last to keep it more easily manageable. The basic idea here is to run all the cables as clean and evenly as possible. This is also where the zip ties come in handy. Now being that I have a large power supply cover, it also gives me plenty of storage for hiding cables. And this case happens to have a fairly large groove in the edges to tuck some away as well. Now the build is pretty much done. We just need to put on our side panels and then secure them in place with the thumb screws. Lastly, we can install the dust covers. And it's all done. I proudly present to you the Workstation DeStroir. Let me know what you guys think of everything. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it taught you something. Any questions, comments, or concerns, let me know below. Subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Hit the like button if you liked it, or the dislike button if you didn't. Until the next one, guys, y'all have a good one. And happy Father's Day out there to all the dads.